Maybe you clicked out of curiosity. Or maybe, without even knowing, you were looking for a quieter kind of story. One where the words don't rush, and the silence also says something. I wrote this piece with care, like stitching together memories, regrets, and tiny hopes, hoping that somewhere in it you'll find something that feels a little like your own. And if that happens, even just for a second, stay. Listen as long as you need. And if something speaks to you, leave a trace. It doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes a quiet still here in the comments means more than you think. And if you feel like it, share, like, subscribe. No pressure, just presence. I live in a quiet riverside town in southern Missouri, the kind of place that shows up on flood maps more often than the Weather Channel. I'm 64 now, and I've lived here most of my life, long enough to know when a storm warning actually means something, and when it's just the town crying wolf again. This time, it didn't feel like a false alarm. The rain had been coming down hard since yesterday. By the time the emergency alert buzzed on my phone, flood warning, evacuate low-lying areas immediately. I was already pulling boots over my pajama pants. My house sits just a few 100 feet from the river. It's old, creaky, but it's mine. My late husband, John, built the back porch with his own hands. Every plank still smells like cedar oil in him. I called my kids. I wasn't panicking. I just needed a ride out. My truck's been in the shop since last week, and with water already lapping at the end of the gravel drive, I wasn't about to risk wading into the current. First call, Melissa, my oldest, lives 2 towns over, drives a Tesla. "Mom," she said with that voice she uses when she thinks I'm being ridiculous, "it's barely raining in Springfield. You always overreact to these things." I told her it wasn't just rain. The levee had already breached once last winter. The river didn't care how fancy your car was or what zip code you lived in. "Mom," she sighed, "I've got the gala tonight. I can't just cancel. The mayor's going to be there." "The mayor? Of course." "Stay put, okay? The National Guard usually comes by if it gets really bad. Love you." Click. Second call, James, my middle child, divorced, 2 kids, works from home, in tech, though I've never fully understood what that means. "Ah, geez, Mom," he said, clearly distracted. "I've got both kids this weekend. Mia's got strep, and I haven't even showered." I offered to wait on the porch, said I'd wear a poncho and meet him halfway if that helped. "I can't leave them alone, Mom. You know that." I get it, I do. But it still stung. Third call, Nathan, my youngest. No answer. Voicemail. I left a message. Calm, short. "Hey, sweetie, it's Mom. Just a little flooding out here. Nothing urgent, but if you're free, give me a call." That was 3 hours ago. Still no reply. So I started packing. Not the kind of packing you do for a vacation. More like, what do I take if the living room floats away? Flashlight, portable charger, Ziploc bags of documents, peanut butter and bottled water. I wrapped up a photo of me and John from our honeymoon in Yellowstone, put it in a dry bag with a change of socks. The wind picked up. Rain clattered against the windows like 1,000 coins tossed against glass. The lights flickered twice, then held steady. I stood by the front door, clutching a flashlight I'd already tested 3 times. And then I sat down and waited. The house was silent except for the storm tapping out its rhythms on the roof. I kept glancing at the road, hoping for headlights, a familiar car, maybe just a text. Nothing. There's a kind of ache that settles in your chest when you realize you've raised 3 children, but not one of them thought your safety came before their schedule. But I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. Instead, I poured myself a cup of coffee, still hot from the old percolator, and pulled a chair over by the window. If no one was coming, I'd stay awake and greet the water myself. The sound changed around midnight. Up until then, it was just rain. Angry, steady, relentless. But sometime after I'd finished my third cup of coffee and folded the throw blanket across my lap for the fifth time, it shifted. Lower. Closer. Heavier. I stood and looked out the front window. The gravel road was gone. Just water now. Glossy and slow, rising in eerie silence like it was sneaking in while the world slept. The first step into the front hallway was enough to feel it, cold around my ankles. I didn't panic. Not yet. This house had flooded before, back in '93 and again in 2011. But it had never reached the inside. I grabbed the mop and towels like muscle memory, hoping to slow the inevitable, still thinking it might stop. 10 minutes later, the water was calf-high. I moved fast, or as fast as a 64-year-old woman with a sore hip can. I unplugged everything, pulled the photos off the lower shelves, stuffed pillows and quilts into plastic bins, and shoved them onto the couch. I grabbed the dry bag I'd packed earlier. At least I'd been right about that. The water didn't surge in. It crept. It took its time. Quiet and polite, like it wanted me to see what was coming and sit with it a while. By the time I realized I had to get upstairs, the living room rug was floating. The staircase groaned as I climbed. My knees weren't what they used to be. I'd meant to have the railing reinforced last spring, but I'd spent that money helping James with Mia's braces. The attic wasn't much, just exposed beams and old insulation, but it was high and dry. That was good enough for now. I'd just settled onto a pile of blankets when the flashlight flickered, then went out. Great. I tried not to think about the fact that the water heater was already submerged, or that the pressure from the outside could eventually crack the windows. Tried not to imagine what the morning would look like, if morning ever came. Then I heard it, a loud crack. Somewhere below, the kind of sound that makes your stomach lurch before your brain catches up. I stood up too fast, tried to move toward the attic window, and slipped. The floor came up to meet me hard, shoulder first. The pain stole my breath. I think I cried out, but I couldn't tell over the roar outside. I laid there for a moment, couldn't move, couldn't even roll onto my side, just the sharp pulse of pain, the cold seeping through the walls, and the faint smell of mildew from the attic wood. And that's when I knew. No one was coming. Not Melissa with her electric SUV. Not James with his excuses. Not Nathan, whose voicemail I'd now memorized. Just me and the water. I closed my eyes. The pain dulled a little. Or maybe my body was giving up on trying to register it. I thought of John, of the way he used to hum under his breath when he made coffee, of how he'd leave me notes on the fridge like we were still dating. I wondered if there was a heaven, whether he'd be there, wearing that flannel jacket I could never get him to throw out. "John," I whispered, "if you're still out there, I might be coming home." The wind rattled the window frame behind me. A soft thud echoed from somewhere downstairs, something toppling over in the kitchen maybe. And then, nothing. Just the sound of water rising. There's a kind of stillness right before you pass out. Not peace exactly, but distance, like the world is slipping a few feet away from you, and you just let it. That's where I was, half curled on the attic floor, one arm numb, the other too cold to feel. Then I heard it, faint at first, muffled by rain and wind and whatever fog my mind was in. "Miss Lucinda," a boy's voice. "Miss Lucinda, are you in there?" I tried to respond, but it came out as barely a breath. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming. More shouting. Then a loud bang. The attic trapdoor rattled once, twice. Then someone heaved it open from below. The first thing I saw was the beam of a flashlight cutting through the dim. Then a soaked baseball cap. Then a face I hadn't seen in months. Rami. He was drenched, head to toe, water pouring off his jacket like he'd walked through a hurricane. "Oh my God," he said when he saw me. Jesus, you're freezing. I tried to smile. Couldn't manage it. He pulled himself up into the attic and crouched beside me. His fingers were shaking as he touched my shoulder, gently at first, like he wasn't sure I was real. "Can you move?" he asked. I barely nodded. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, I got you." He slipped his arm under mine and hoisted me up with more strength than I expected from a 17-year-old. We moved slowly, me limping, him practically carrying me, back down the stairs that had nearly killed me an hour ago. The water downstairs had risen even more. It was at waist level now. The refrigerator had tipped. A chair floated past like a ghost. Rami didn't hesitate. He grabbed a dining chair, wedged me onto it, and started pushing. Through water, through furniture, through mud. "I'm taking you to the old fire lookout," he said, half to himself. "Up by the tree line. It's dry there. They haven't torn it down yet." I wanted to ask how he'd found me, why he'd come, but the cold kept shutting my thoughts down, one by one. So I let him move. I let myself be carried. For once, I didn't fight the help. The rain hadn't stopped, but it had softened by the time we reached the ridge. The lookout tower wasn't much, just an old shed with warped planks and half a roof, but it was dry, and it was safe. He laid me down on a pile of emergency blankets, then pulled a small camping stove from his pack like some kind of miracle. Within minutes, there was heat, then tea, then light. Then, finally, his voice. "I should have come sooner," Rami said, kneeling next to me. "But I didn't know. Not until this morning." I blinked at him. My mouth still hadn't thawed enough to speak clearly. He reached into his backpack and unzipped a waterproof pouch. Inside was a thick bundle wrapped in clear plastic. "This," he said, "was in John's old toolbox in the barn, hidden under the drawer. It had your name on it." I stared at the packet. Yellowed paper, a corner of a manila envelope, John's handwriting. "I think he wanted you to have it," Rami said softly. "And I think it's time." I didn't have the strength to reach for it. But in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was this. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. And the one person who had no reason to come back for me had come anyway. When I opened my eyes, the world was orange. Not sunrise? Firelight. I was lying on my side, wrapped in blankets that smelled faintly of cedar and damp canvas. The corner of the shed glowed from the tiny flame Rami had coaxed from a stove no bigger than a toaster. He sat nearby, cross-legged on the wooden floor, one eye on the flame, the other on me. His hoodie was hung to dry on a rafter. His boots, soaked, were set near the door. He looked up when he saw me stirring. His face changed fast, from worry to relief to something like guilt. "You're awake," he said. "I wasn't sure if—" He trailed off. I tried to sit up. My shoulder ached, but it moved. That was something. "You dragged me out of the flood," I said, voice gravelly from the cold. "Kind of carried, kind of pushed," he replied, managing a crooked smile. "You're lighter than you look." "Careful," I warned, deadpan. "I can still update my will." That made him laugh. A real laugh, brief and boyish. Then it faded just as quickly. He reached behind him and pulled out a zippered pouch. Carefully, like it was something sacred, he unwrapped the plastic and took out a manila envelope. It had my name on it. Lucinda. Only open when you don't know who to trust anymore. John's handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. Slanted, precise. The way he wrote grocery lists like legal documents. I didn't take the envelope right away. Instead, I looked at Rami. He wasn't shivering anymore, but his eyes were red, not from cold. "Where did you find it?" I asked. "Back of the barn," he said. "Under the drawer in the old desk. I think John hid it there on purpose." "Why would he do that?" He hesitated, looked at his hands. I think he knew this day might come. The fire crackled softly. I reached out, took the envelope. Why'd you come for me, Rami? I asked quietly. You didn't owe me anything. I haven't seen you in almost a year. He looked up, finally meeting my eyes. Because I knew no one else would. There it was. The truth. No grand gesture, no speech. Just a simple sentence from a boy who had no obligation to be there, and yet was. I nodded slowly, and for the first time in what felt like years, I let myself believe someone might actually mean it. The envelope wasn't thick, but it felt heavy, the kind of weight that doesn't come from paper. Comes from knowing something inside is about to change the way you see your life. I opened it slowly. Rami sat across from me, silent. The stove hissed softly. Outside, the storm had faded to a steady drizzle. Inside the envelope were two things: a handwritten letter from John, and a folded legal document with my full name typed neatly at the top. I opened the letter first. His handwriting was slower now, more deliberate. The same hand that used to scribble jokes in the margins of my crossword puzzles now carried something else, an urgency, a tremble in the loops. Lucinda, if you're reading this, it means you've reached the point I was afraid of. That point where you're surrounded by people, but still feel alone. I didn't want it to come to this. God, I prayed it wouldn't. But I also knew you, knew how much you'd forgive, knew how blind love can be. So I made plans, quiet ones, not out of revenge, out of love. The will was next. He had changed everything. Not long before he died, he rewrote the document that had once split our assets evenly among our 3 children. Now, everything, the house, the savings, the land, even his pension, went to me. And to the one who proves to care without asking for anything? No names, just that. And a final clause. Any beneficiary who attempts to challenge this will forfeit all claims, effective immediately. I sat there for a moment, stunned. This wasn't just about money. It was about faith, loyalty, legacy. Then I saw the postscript at the bottom of the letter, a separate sheet of paper folded neatly behind the legal documents, labeled simply, private, only for Lucinda. My stomach turned before I even unfolded it. It wasn't long, just a page, but it shattered something I didn't know was still whole. The envelope wasn't thick, but it felt heavy. The kind of weight that doesn't come from paper, comes from knowing something inside is about to change the way you see your life. I opened it slowly. Rami sat across from me, silent. The stove hissed softly. Outside, the storm had faded to a steady drizzle. Inside the envelope were two things: a handwritten letter from John, and a folded legal document with my full name typed neatly at the top. I opened the letter first. His handwriting was slower now, more deliberate. The same hand that used to scribble jokes in the margins of my crossword puzzles now carried something else, an urgency, a tremble in the loops. Lucinda, if you're reading this, it means you've reached the point I was afraid of. That point where you're surrounded by people, but still feel alone. I didn't want it to come to this. God, I prayed it wouldn't. But I also knew you, knew how much you'd forgive, knew how blind love can be. So I made plans, quiet ones, not out of revenge, out of love. The will was next. He had changed everything. Not long before he died, he rewrote the document that had once split our assets evenly among our 3 children. Now, everything, the house, the savings, the land, even his pension, went to me, and to the one who proves to care without asking for anything. No names, just that, and a final clause. Any beneficiary who attempts to challenge this will forfeit all claims, effective immediately. I sat there for a moment, stunned. This wasn't just about money. It was about faith, loyalty, legacy. Then I saw the postscript at the bottom of the letter. A separate sheet of paper, folded neatly behind the legal documents. Labeled simply, "Private, only for Lucinda." My stomach turned before I even unfolded it. It wasn't long, just a page, but it shattered something I didn't know was still whole. John had written, "You've blamed yourself for not having more children. For years you believed what they told you, that your body failed you. But it wasn't your body, Lucinda. It was Melissa." I didn't know until the year before I passed. I found the medical receipts hidden in her attic, prescriptions she ordered in your name, filled out by a friend of hers in pharmacy school. Long expired by then. But the truth was in the paper trail. You thought the hormones were early menopause. That's what she told you. You even thanked her for helping you manage it. But she wasn't helping. She was preventing. She was 17, scared, jealous. She didn't want to lose her place as the only one, and in doing so, she took something from you that you never even knew you had. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me went very still, like a lake the moment before a storm hits. 17. She had been just a girl, but so had I, once, and I would have done anything to have more children. We tried. God knows we tried. And all this time, I'd lived with that ache, thinking I was broken, that my body had failed, that my husband deserved more than I could give him. It was never my body that failed. It was my daughter who betrayed me. Rami reached out, maybe to say something, maybe to apologize for being there when he shouldn't have been. But I shook my head gently. I didn't need words. What I needed was clarity. And now, I had it. The fire had burned down to a soft red glow. Rain still tapped on the old roof like someone too polite to knock louder. I hadn't spoken since reading John's letter. My hands were still gripping the edge of the blanket, like I might fall out of myself if I let go. Rami sat across from me, quiet, respectful. He hadn't asked questions, hadn't offered comfort, just waited. That, in itself, was a kind of grace. "There's more," he said finally, voice low. "I didn't want to overwhelm you." "Too late for that," I said, my voice like gravel. "Let's just rip off the rest." He reached into his backpack again, this time pulling out a small, black notebook, bound with a leather strap. It looked worn, the corners frayed from years of use. "Your husband's handwriting," Rami said. "Pretty sure he meant for you to find this too." I opened it slowly. Inside were rows and rows of entries, dated meticulously. Transfers, checks, wire requests. Notes in the margins. "Melissa said it's for medical expenses. No receipts." "James claims Mia needs braces. Again?" "Nathan, last time, I swear. Same as last year." Every entry was like a pin pushed into my chest. There were hundreds of them. "He kept track of everything," Rami said. "Even when he told them he wasn't. Quietly, just watching." Page after page, money we thought had gone to family emergencies, tuition, debt relief. But the amounts were too round, too frequent. Some transfers were just days apart, thousands, disappearing. And then came the receipts. Luxury spa appointments, flight confirmations, Amazon orders for tech I'd never seen, dinner bills from cities none of them lived in. All paid from our joint accounts. "He tried to stop it, didn't he?" I said, throat tight. "He did, but they were always one step ahead." Then Rami handed me a second folder, thinner, but somehow more dangerous. Inside were typed forms. Some were unsigned, some weren't. Medical assessments, financial guardianship paperwork, legal drafts. One was a declaration of incompetency. My name at the top, underlined. "They've been planning this for months," Rami said. "Melissa found a lawyer in the city. James contacted a memory care center. Nathan was supposed to keep you distracted while they filed." "Distracted?" "Bringing Emma over. suggesting you misplace things, saying you're forgetful. I think they were trying to build a paper trail. I stared at the signatures, at my children's names on forms that would strip me of the right to make decisions about my own life. They were going to put me away, I whispered. A private care facility, expensive, controlled by the same lawyer Melissa's firm works with. Once you're declared mentally unfit, they gain power of attorney, full financial control. And then? Then they drain what's left, sell the house, liquidate the accounts, move on. I didn't feel sad, not this time. I felt cold, clear, like stepping outside into a winter night after the fever breaks. They really think I'm that easy to erase, I said. Rami didn't answer. He didn't need to. There was one more document in the folder, a post-it stuck to the front. If she ever needs this, show her everything and remind her who she is. John's handwriting, again. I closed the folder and looked up at Rami. Thank you, I said. For what? For showing me this while there's still time to do something about it. He nodded. Then he did something I didn't expect. He reached out and took my hand, carefully, like it might break. You're not crazy, Miss Lucinda, and you're not alone. For the first time in a long time, I believed both things. The floodwaters receded 2 days later. What had arrived like a beast, savage, loud, uninvited, left quietly. The river pulled itself back into its banks like nothing ever happened. The house looked almost intact from the outside. But once we stepped in, the smell of wet insulation and rotting wood hit like a brick wall. Moss lined the baseboards. Furniture was water-stained and warped. The refrigerator had floated halfway into the hallway. But the power was back, and the roof hadn't collapsed. Which, for this town, was a win. Rami helped me settle in. He started the cleanup without being asked, hauling debris, airing out rooms, opening windows. You should probably stay with someone for a few days, he said gently. I'm fine here, I replied. I need to be here. He didn't argue. That afternoon, I did something simple. Something no one thought I'd do. I texted all 3 of my children. The flood's over. I'm safe. The house is standing. Hope you're well. Mom. One by one, the messages turned from sent to seen. Then, nothing. Not even a thumbs up. Not even glad you're okay. Rami saw the look on my face and didn't ask. He just kept wiping down the cabinets, but I felt it in my chest, that hollow space where love used to echo. The next morning, I dressed with intention. Simple blouse, clean jeans, my old navy trench coat, the one John liked. I walked to the study and pulled out my own folder, the one marked Legal Affairs. It was thinner than John's, but not by much. Then I wrote the letter, just 1 page, typed, signed with a pen that still had his initials on it. Subject line, family meeting, mandatory attendance location, Tatum and Bryce Law Office Thursday, 3 p.m. Agenda, clarification of estate planning and immediate concerns. No warmth, no love, Mom, not this time. I sent it, printed 3 copies, mailed them, certified. 1 to each child's address on file. I knew they'd show up, if not out of guilt, then out of greed. Rami watched me seal the envelopes. You sure you want to go through with this? He asked. I'm not going through with anything, I said. They are? I'm just letting them walk into it. He nodded, but not out of agreement. More like respect. That night, the house was quiet again. No phone buzzed. No car pulled into the driveway. No voice on the answering machine saying, "Sorry I didn't call back sooner." The silence didn't hurt this time. It confirmed something, and that, oddly, made it easier to breathe. The law office sat on a quiet block near Main Street, tucked between a bakery and a shuttered bookstore. Nothing grand, nothing flashy, just a small brick building with old carpet and the smell of stale coffee. But today, it felt like a courtroom. I arrived first. Rami sat beside me, though he stayed a step back. Observer, not participant. The receptionist looked nervous when she called out, "Ms. Lucinda, your attorney's ready." Inside, the lights were too bright, the conference table too polished. But I sat tall. Then they arrived. Melissa first. Heels, perfume, $1,000 handbag that still had the price tag tucked inside. James followed, looking like he'd rolled out of a golf club brochure. Nathan came last, hoodie half-zipped, phone in hand, chewing gum. Not one of them said hello. They sat. "So," Melissa said, scanning the room, "what's this about? We thought you might have had, another episode or something." I didn't flinch. Mr. Bryant, my attorney, cleared his throat and opened a folder. "This meeting has been called at Ms. Lucinda's request. We'll be reviewing legal matters pertaining to the estate of Mr. Harold Temple, deceased." Melissa blinked. James leaned forward. Nathan stopped chewing. "Wait, Dad left a new will?" Nathan asked. "Correct," Mr. Bryant said. "Amended 3 months before his passing. Notarized, witnessed." "But we already have a will," James said stiffly. "The one from 4 years ago. We submitted it last summer." "It's been nullified," Bryant said, flat. "Per legal procedure. This new document supersedes all prior versions." He slid the will across the table. It was brief, precise, final. "All assets, including but not limited to the primary residence, retirement accounts, and life insurance policies, are bequeathed to Lucinda Temple and, conditionally, to any heir whose actions reflect sincere loyalty, absent of financial motive." There was a pause. "What the hell does that even mean?" Melissa hissed. Bryant didn't flinch. He opened a second folder. Inside were the receipts, the ledger, the wire transfers, and finally, Harold's voice, recorded on a small device. He pressed play. "If you're hearing this, it means the lies caught up. I loved my kids. God knows I did. But love doesn't mean blindness. You took what wasn't yours. You manipulated. You threatened. And you almost fooled her. Almost." Silence. "To Lucinda, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I needed proof, and now you have it." Melissa covered her mouth. James went pale. Nathan stood up, muttering, "This is bullshit," and walked out. Melissa stayed, and then tears, but not the kind that beg forgiveness, the kind that know it's already too late. "I didn't mean for it to get that far," she whispered. "I was just scared. You kept saying you wanted to adopt again, even at your age. I thought I'd be replaced. I thought I'd lose everything." She looked at me, not with love, not even guilt, just a raw, exhausted kind of regret. "I was 17, she said. "I didn't understand what I was doing, and then it just spiraled." I nodded once, calm. "You could have told the truth." "I didn't think you'd believe me." "You're right," I said. Bryant stood. "Unless there are further objections, all contents of the estate shall remain under Lucinda Temple's sole discretion. Any legal challenges will be met with the full extent of evidentiary defense, including the recording." Melissa said nothing. No apology, no more tears, only silence. When I walked out, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. Not healed, not whole, but finally done bleeding from wounds I hadn't known were still open. We didn't drive home right away. After the meeting, Rami and I stopped at the courthouse. It was quiet. Just the hum of fluorescent lights, the click of keys at the clerk's desk, and a faint coffee smell that never really left the building. I signed 2 documents. One terminated all financial powers previously granted to Melissa, James, and Nathan. The other petitioned the court for a new designation of next of kin. "You sure about this?" the clerk asked gently. "Yes," I said, without looking up. "It's not every day we see this kind of reversal." It's not every day you survive betrayal and still know exactly who you want by your side. She nodded, stamped the forms, and placed them in a tray labeled Family Matters. Back at the house, the light was soft. The air smelled clean. I brewed tea. Rami sat across from me, unsure, a little restless. He hadn't said much since the meeting, not even when Melissa cried. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the small family photo, the last one we ever took all together. I placed it face down, then I handed him a folded paper. "What's this?" he asked. "Proof," I said. "That family isn't biology, it's choice." He opened it, slowly. It was the adoption filing, legal, witnessed, already signed by the judge. "You're not just my emergency contact anymore," I said, half smiling. "You're my son." His eyes went glassy. He blinked fast and looked away. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I didn't do any of it to get this." "I know," I replied. "That's why you deserve it." That evening, I made one last call. I left a voicemail on each of their phones. My voice was calm, no tremor, no heat, just the truth. "I carried you. I loved you. But I will not carry what you've become. You were my children, but you're not my family. Family shows up. Family protects. Family doesn't drain you dry and call it love. I didn't get to choose the children I gave birth to. But I do get to choose the one I give my name to now." I ended the message with 6 words. "Don't come back. This chapter's closed." Then I turned off the landline. And for the first time in months, maybe years, there was silence in the house that felt like peace. Spring came early that year. The storm left behind bruised trees, warped fences, and a silence that was almost reverent, like the world knew something had shifted. Rami had been helping me rebuild little by little. New shelves, fresh coats of paint, a front gate that didn't creak for the first time in 20 years. And this morning, we turned to the porch. "We should plant something here," Rami said, pointing to the spot beneath the windowsill. "Something permanent." "Like what?" I asked. "Whatever lasts." He started digging. I sat nearby with lemonade and a hat too wide for my head. Then his shovel hit something solid. A soft clunk, not stone, not pipe. Wood. We both paused. "You bury anything out here?" he asked. "Not that I remember." He knelt and brushed away the dirt with his hands. Slowly, a small wooden box emerged, sealed in layers of plastic. My breath caught. That corner, exactly where Harold used to sit every afternoon, sipping tea, humming that old Otis Redding tune. Rami brought the box over. It was light. The wood was darkened with time, but intact. No lock, just a sliding latch. Inside, a faded photograph, Harold, myself, and a newborn baby I'd never seen before. And a letter, folded once, yellowed at the edges. I opened it slowly. "If you're reading this, it means Rami didn't leave. Years ago, I got a letter from an old army buddy. He was dying, alone. His only son was in foster care. He asked me to watch over the boy if anything ever happened. I took the request seriously, but I never told you. I didn't know how. And later, I worried it'd break something between us. So I waited. Too long, maybe? But if you're holding this now, then you saw Rami for who he really is. Not blood, but brave, loyal, kind. And maybe the piece of me that gets to live on. Thank you for choosing him. That's all I ever hoped for. H." My hands trembled, but my heart didn't. The weight of it didn't crush. It clarified. He hadn't betrayed me. He had trusted me, with the truth, in time. And he'd been right. "Are you okay?" Rami asked, concerned. I looked at him, the same way I had days ago when I'd signed the papers to give him my name. "I am now," I said. "More than I've been in a long time." We planted the tree over that spot, quietly, with care. We didn't need to speak. The wind did that for us. And for the first time, the porch felt like home again.